Hi there, my name is Amanda, and today's video is going to be my Pan Those Eyeshadows update. If this is the first video that you're seeing from me, I will link my playlist up above and down below so that you can catch up with my progress before we jump into this video. So as always, let's go from the least to most amount of uses in each shade. And the first shadow that I want to talk about comes from my Tarte Tartlet in Bloom, and it is the shade Rocker. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. Probably doesn't look any different because I only used this shade one time this past month. And I decided that I'm gonna roll this palette out of the project. I think it's so ingrained in my head that when I first bought this palette, it was for the purpose of work. I just wanted to look a little more professional. So when I bought this palette 5 years ago, that's been in my head for 5 years. So this isn't really like a fun palette to me. This is more of something that I travel with, something that I know works for professional looks, for work, for interviews, things like that. So it's just not really something that I want to work on within this project right now, but I am going to keep it eligible to be rolled in again. And there is a shade in this palette, the shade Firecracker right here, and I don't use that for work, so maybe if this palette is rolled in again, I'll just go ahead and pick that shade to work on within the project. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from my e.l.f. Bite-Sized Pumpkin Pie palette, and I was working on the first matte shade, so I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. You still can't really see much visible progress in the shade, but I did use it 4 times this past month for a total of 14 times within the project. And I did actually end up hitting pan in this palette in this end shade here, the coppery shade. And I really like this shade. I was kind of getting burnt out with this orange shade kind of taking over my looks. So I started using this by itself, and that's how I got to the pan. So I'm really happy that this got its use in October when I want to play with these types of shades. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from my Colourpop Blush Crush palette, and the shade I rolled in was Pop a Bottle. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. I don't know how much you will be able to tell, but I did use this shade quite a few times. I used it 6 times this past month, and I did use it with a brush and with my finger, and I think in the future I'm going to use a brush with it. This shade is kind of chunky, and when I use it with my finger, it can kind of just like really place just big chunks of like the shimmer glitter on my lids, and that's not a cute look, so it's a lot easier to control with a brush, so I think that's how I'm going to go about it in the future. And this works really well for pretty much all cool-toned looks, so I think as we start moving into the cooler months and I want to use cool tones more, then this will get more use. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from the BH Cosmetics Chillin' in Chicago palette, and the shade that I rolled in last month was the shade Chi-Town, so I will put a picture up of where it was before. And without blinding you, this is where it is today. You can see a little pan in this shade, and I did use it 7 times this past month. It seems to be the magic number for me with most of my shimmer shades, but this was a fun palette to use. I used it a lot with the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette, and I also used it a lot with my ABH Soft Glam palette. The tones in those palettes really complemented this shade very well, and I enjoyed getting use out of that very metallic gold shade now instead of in December when I'm not going to want to reach for it at all. And then the last shade that I was working on comes from the Natasha Denona Glam palette, and the shade I was working on was Brow Bone. So I will have a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. I think you can tell there's a dent in there, and I did use it 16 times this past month. I did use it the first time all over my lids because I thought this shade would be a little too dark to use as an inner corner or brow bone highlight. Since I did that, I thought it was just a little bit too light for me to like wearing it all over my lid. So I am wearing it as an inner corner and brow bone highlight today, and that's how I think I'm going to continue using it. So with shades like this, I'm not really in a rush to hit pan, so I'm okay if it takes until December to hit pan in this shade. but this is now the only palette in my collection without a pan, and knock on wood, because I say that and then I bring new palettes into my collection, but I'm trying not to do that. So hopefully this is going to have pan by December so I can meet my ultimate goal with this project, which is to have a pan in every palette. So last month I had pan in 41 shades, and since I hit pan in 2 shades this past month, my total pans in my collection is now 43, and my pan percentage went from 14.1% last month to 14.8% this month. So I need to hit pan in 1 more shade in order to also reach that 15% threshold, which would also be fantastic, but I'm not going to rush it. If I don't hit it this year, that's okay, but I think I can do it. It kind of depends how I work with this next color palette, so we'll see. So for this next round, I rolled in 3 new shades from 3 new palettes, and the first palette that I rolled in is my Colourpop Flutter palette. I have a love-hate relationship with this guy. They were in the project for a while, and towards the beginning of the year, and I was getting a little kind of tired of using it, but I am excited to have it rolled into the project again. And the shade that I rolled in this time for November is the shade here in Gotta Fly, which I was kind of nervous about because it's a darker shade, and I have used this all over my lid before and I did not like it at all. But it kind of reminds me of the ABH Soft Glam palette, the shade Sultry in there, except this is much more purple. I think I can use it as an outer corner kind of deepening shade, and that it will look good that way. And I have used it 3 times already this month, and I did use it that way and I do enjoy it, so I'm happy to get some use in this palette. I think I am pretty close to hitting pan and float on. This is like a matte with a shimmer to it, so it's much more softer than a normal matte shade, so there's definitely a dip in there. You could probably see it from there. And then something I noticed one of the times that I used this palette, there's actually pan in this shade here, in this white shade, which I think if I get it at the right angle, you can probably see that little fleck there. However, I'm not counting it as pan yet, because I think this happened when I was depotting all of my Colourpop shades and I didn't have a magnet, so I was using the lead from a mechanical pencil, and it just kind of gouged this shade. Just a little itty bitty pan, but I'm not counting it yet since it's not very even. But I think I could hit pan in either of these shades pretty soon. The next shade that I rolled in comes from the Colourpop Fame palette, and I had said last month that I had decluttered some shades in my collection, and I did declutter some of the deeper shades within this palette to kind of make it more of a lighter, cool toned palette, which I personally like this color story a little bit more. And the shade that I rolled in for the project this time is the shade here in The Most, which is a very pretty light pink shade, so it will work well with the other cooler tone shades that I have in my rotation this month. So when I was rolling in those 2 Colourpop palettes, I was secretly hoping that I was going to roll in the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette, but that never happened. And I decided that I was going to go ahead and pick the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette to be rolled in right now, just because this is the time of year that I really enjoy using it, and I don't want this season to pass by without having to focus on this palette. So I did roll this in, but I did randomly choose the shade that I'm going to be working on. And the shade that I rolled in is Hive right here, which is very similar to the shade that was just rolled out from the e.l.f. Pumpkin Pie palette, but that's okay. This has a little bit more of like a yellowness to it. It's just a little more fun, and I do have it in my crease today. I did something just very simple with this palette, and I definitely can see myself like wanting to reach into warm tones but not wanting to do a whole lot with it, and this being a look that I will want to go for. And I definitely think I'm not going to hit pan at a matte shade within this palette, so this will be probably one of my 15 uses and then roll out. And something that I've been seeing from the Pan Those Eyeshadows videos that have been posted recently, it seems like a handful of people are going to be having their finales in November and then using December as some time off before they kick off the project again in January. I kind of like that idea. I like the idea of having a break. So I think what I might do is go ahead and use November and maybe towards the beginning of December, maybe around like between the 5th and the 10th, kind of give my finale and have just some time to work on some eyeshadows or just do my makeup however I want to do it. I'm also kind of in a weird time right now because I am looking for work because I'm a newly credentialed professional, so hopefully I will be finding work soon. I might be moving out of state soon, so it just kind of depends on what happens if I give the finale of this project a little bit early, if I even do this project next year. I really hope that I can, but I'll kind of have to wait and see what happens. So this is my new color story for the month of November. I think it's a lot more cool tone than last month. I think last month was a little more like fall and cohesive, and I don't know if it was really that warm toned. It was more neutral, I guess. But I feel like this is more cool toned, and you definitely see that purple there. So it'll be interesting to see how I can work on all of these shades and what kind of progress I can make. And something that I have already done, I have used all these top 4 shades together and they all work really well, so I can definitely see that being a look, and then using this when I want something more cool toned, kind of having like those 2 go-to looks. So yeah, it'll be interesting over this next month. So that is my Pan Those Eyeshadows update. I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!